30. I've been walking this shadowy path for 11 years. Being a ghost hunter isn't glamorous, but it teaches you to confront fear, yours and others. Still, every time I answer a call for help in the middle of the night, there's a weight in my chest I can't ignore. Tonight was no different. Rain lashed against the windows like an oppressive symphony. I had just returned from a grueling exorcism and was ready to settle in with a cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. "This is Ethan," I answered, trying to mask the exhaustion in my voice. "Ethan?" The voice on the other end was hoarse, trembling. It belonged to a woman, someone who'd clearly been crying but was trying to hold herself together. "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" I asked, keeping my tone calm even as unease prickled at the back of my mind. "My name is Jessica," she said, her words hesitant. I don't even know where to begin. Lately, I haven't been able to sleep. The nightmares won't stop. It's like something is watching me. I feel weaker every day, like it's draining me, draining her. I frowned. To some, it might sound dramatic, but I'd heard this story enough to know it was usually the truth. There was something malevolent in her life, feeding off her. "Can you tell me more?" I prompted gently. "When did this start? Did anything unusual happen before this began?" Jessica hesitated. Then, in a quiet, almost ashamed voice, she confessed, "I don't know if I should say this, but it's my fault. A few years ago, I went to a sorcerer. He told me to do some things. I got what I wanted. But now, things have gone terribly wrong. A sorcerer. My instincts flared. I dealt with cases like this before, and they were always dangerous." "What did he have you do?" I pressed. Her voice dropped further, trembling with guilt. "I wanted a promotion at work. He told me to drip cat's blood onto a mirror as part of a ritual. I did it, but now I feel like the mirror is watching me." The mention of blood, mirrors, and a sorcerer sent a chill through me. This was no ordinary case. "Where are you now?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She gave me her address, an old, run-down part of the city. I hung up and grabbed my gear. Silver charms, holy water, an iron dagger, and my spirit lamp. Nothing flashy, just tools that could make the difference between life and death. The rain hadn't let up as I drove through the dark city streets, my thoughts circling Jessica's words. Another soul driven by greed, I thought grimly. But deep down, I knew this wouldn't be that simple. The rain followed me all the way to Jessica's neighborhood, a forgotten corner of the city where time seemed to stand still. The buildings loomed like skeletons, their cracked facades dripping with rainwater. Puddles formed on the broken pavement, reflecting the flickering light of malfunctioning street lamps. The atmosphere felt heavy, as though the air itself wanted to warn me away. Jessica lived on the top floor of an old apartment building. When she opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hoarse voice on the phone had hinted at her condition, but seeing her in person was worse than I'd imagined. She was gaunt, her skin stretched thin over her bones, her eyes sunken and lifeless. Her trembling hands clutched the doorframe as though she might collapse at any moment. "Come in," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I stepped inside, immediately hit by a wave of oppressive air. The apartment smelled faintly of rot, though I couldn't identify the source. The space was sparsely furnished but in disarray, as if Jessica had long since given up trying to maintain it. My gaze was drawn to the living room wall, where an antique mirror hung, a silver-framed relic with a surface dulled by time and shadow. "That's it, isn't it?" I asked, nodding toward the mirror. Jessica followed my gaze and nodded, her fear palpable. "It started after I brought it home. First, it was just strange feelings. Then, after he died, it got worse." I turned to her sharply. "He died?" "The sorcerer," she clarified. "They found him in his apartment. He'd been burned alive. No one knows how it happened." Her voice trembled as she spoke, and she refused to meet my gaze. "But after his death, everything escalated, especially with the mirror." I approached the mirror cautiously, studying its tarnished surface. It wasn't just a decorative piece. It exuded a subtle, chilling energy that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. Felt alive. "Have you tried getting rid of it?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. She shook her head, her lips trembling. "I tried. I threw it out, but it always came back. The next day, it would be right there on the wall, like it had never left." Her words deepened the weight pressing on my chest. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a bond, a tether between the object and its victim. "I need to check the rest of the apartment," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "There might be other things out of place." Jessica nodded, staying close as I moved through the space. The kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom were all unremarkable on the surface. Yet each corner seemed steeped in shadow, as though the light could only go so far. I found nothing overtly supernatural, but the atmosphere was suffocating. Eventually, I returned to the living room, drawn again to the mirror. "Sometimes, I think it moves," Jessica said suddenly, her voice almost a whisper. "Moves?" I frowned, turning to her. She nodded, her gaze fixed on the mirror. "It watches me, like it's alive." Her words sent a chill through me, but I kept my expression neutral. "Don't worry, I'll figure this out," I assured her. "Can you really stop it?" she asked, her voice tinged with desperation. "I'll need time," I replied, reaching into my bag for the spirit lamp. "This will help me get a clearer sense of what we're dealing with." The lamp's ethereal light bathed the mirror, revealing faint outlines on its surface. For a moment, it remained still, but then the light flickered. A figure appeared. A man's silhouette, his face obscured by mist, but his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Jessica gasped, stumbling backward. I kept my gaze steady, refusing to flinch. I switched off the lamp, and the figure disappeared. "This is no ordinary haunting," I said, turning back to her. "It's something much deeper." "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'll stay tonight," I said firmly. "I need to observe it and understand its intent." Jessica hesitated but eventually nodded. "I'll get some rest." As she retreated to her bedroom, I sat on the sofa facing the mirror, my gear within arm's reach. The real work was just beginning. The rain continued its relentless assault on the windows, a constant reminder of the night's oppressive weight. Alone in the living room, I arranged my tools neatly on the coffee table, salt, iron dagger, and holy water within easy reach. The mirror hung silently on the wall, its surface reflecting the dim glow of the room's lone lamp. I settled into the sofa, my senses sharp and my focus unyielding. The hours dragged by. The apartment was eerily quiet, as though the world outside had ceased to exist. The mirror showed no signs of movement, but the unease in the air was unmistakable. My instincts warned me that this stillness was a prelude to something far worse. Around midnight, the temperature in the room plummeted. A breeze stirred, impossibly cold, despite the closed windows. The mirror's surface began to fog, as though touched by an unseen breath. I leaned forward, every muscle in my body tensing. And then I saw it. A figure emerged in the glass. A man, his features blurred but unmistakably malevolent. His eyes seemed to pierce through the fog, locking onto mine. He didn't move, but the intensity of his gaze sent a shiver down my spine. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice low but steady. The room offered no reply, but a faint whisper filled the air. It wasn't a single voice, but a chorus, layered and incomprehensible. I strained to make sense of it, but the words slipped away like smoke. The figure in the mirror shifted, his form growing more distinct. His movements were deliberate, as though testing the boundaries of his prison. I reached for the pouch of salt and the iron dagger, ready to act. The fog on the mirror turned crimson, spreading like blood across the glass. The room lights flickered, then went out entirely, plunging me into darkness. I switched on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom but doing little to dispel the oppressive atmosphere. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice firm. The whispers grew louder, their tone more menacing. One word emerged clearly, sending a chill through me. "Her soul," Jessica, the mirror wasn't just cursed. It was a conduit, feeding on her essence. Her deal with the sorcerer had bound her to this relic, and now it demanded payment in full. You can't have her, I said, my voice cold and resolute. She doesn't belong to you. The figure's form wavered, dissolving into mist, only to reform as something far worse. A new face appeared, a young man, his features sharp and predatory. Recognition struck me like a blow. It was the sorcerer. You can't stop me, a guttural voice echoed in the room. It didn't come from the mirror but seemed to emanate from every corner. The sorcerer's face twisted into a grin before dissolving into a swirling black mist that spilled out of the mirror, flooding the room. The air grew heavy, suffocating. As the mist coiled around me, I slammed the dagger into the floor, the sound sharp and jarring. The contract is broken, I shouted. This ends now. The mist hesitated, recoiling slightly, but then surged forward, relentless. I grabbed the pouch of salt, scattering it in an arc around me. The grains ignited with a faint glow, forming a barrier that held the mist at bay. It writhed against the invisible wall, letting out a high-pitched shriek that made my ears ring. The mirror trembled violently, a crack splitting across its surface. The mist dissipated with a final, anguished wail, leaving the room deathly silent. I collapsed onto the floor, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. The fight had been brief but intense, and I knew it was only the beginning. At dawn, Jessica emerged from her room, her face pale with exhaustion. She froze when she saw me slumped against the sofa, the tools scattered around me. What happened? She asked, her voice trembling. I gestured toward the cracked mirror. It's connected to you, but this is deeper than I thought. The sorcerer, he's still here in some way. Her eyes widened in fear. What do we do now? I picked up my tools, placing them back in my bag. We need to find whatever he left behind. A relic, a focus. Without it, this won't end. Jessica's hands trembled, but she nodded. If it means ending this nightmare, I'll do whatever it takes. Morning light seeped into the apartment, but it did little to dispel the chill lingering in the air. Jessica sat at the table, gripping a mug of tea as though it were a lifeline. I can take you to where he worked, she said finally, her voice hesitant. It's an old warehouse on the edge of town. That's where he did his rituals. Are you sure you can find it? I asked, trying to keep my skepticism from showing. She nodded. I went there twice. It's not a place you forget. The warehouse was a relic of a forgotten time, its rusting exterior swallowed by overgrown weeds. The road leading to it was cracked and uneven, dotted with puddles from the rain. As we approached, the sense of foreboding grew heavier with each step. The door creaked open with an eerie groan, revealing a cavernous space filled with debris and shadows. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and something far worse, a metallic tang that clung to the back of my throat. This is where he worked, Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. I scanned the room, my flashlight illuminating strange symbols scrawled across the walls in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. The markings pulsed faintly, as though alive. Don't touch anything, I warned her. She nodded, taking a cautious step back. My light fell on a pile of crates in the corner, their contents spilling onto the floor. Books with cracked spines, rusted candle holders, and scraps of fabric stained with dark smears littered the ground. Among the chaos, one object stood out. A small black box, its surface etched with intricate runes. I crouched down, reaching for the box. Its energy was palpable, an oppressive force that seemed to press against my skin. This is it, I muttered. The moment I lifted it, the air shifted. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and a low growl reverberated through the warehouse. The door slammed shut, cutting off our escape. What's happening? Jessica clutched my arm, her voice shaking. A guardian, I said grimly. He left it to protect this. From the shadows emerged a figure, its shape twisted and grotesque, as though assembled from countless shards. Its glowing red eyes locked onto us, and it let out a guttural roar that sent shivers down my spine. Stay behind me, I ordered, And whatever happens, don't break the salt. The guardian moved closer, its twisted frame seeming to defy natural laws. Its limbs jutted out at unnatural angles, and its glowing red eyes burned with an almost sentient rage. The air in the warehouse grew heavier with each step it took, pressing down on us like a physical weight. Jessica gripped the pouch of salt in her trembling hands, her knuckles white. "What is that thing?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's a protector," I said through clenched teeth. "The sorcerer left it to ensure no one interferes with his work. Or takes this box." The creature let out a guttural roar, the sound vibrating through the walls. It lunged toward us, its jagged limbs slicing through the air. I grabbed the iron dagger from my bag and stepped in front of Jessica. "Stay back and pour the salt," I barked, my focus never leaving the guardian. Jessica fumbled with the pouch, spilling a thin line of salt around her as I moved to intercept the creature. The iron dagger glinted in the faint light as I swung it, striking the guardian's arm. The blade connected with a sharp, metallic clang, sending a jolt up my arm. The creature barely flinched. Its massive claw swiped at me, narrowly missing as I ducked and rolled to the side. The air around it seemed to shimmer, distorting reality like heat waves rising from asphalt. "Damn it," I muttered, realizing the creature wasn't just a physical entity. It was imbued with whatever dark magic the sorcerer had left behind, making it nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. The creature roared again, charging toward me. I dodged, using the momentum to position myself between it and Jessica's salt circle. "Your master is dead," I shouted, gripping the dagger tighter. "This ends here." The guardian paused for a fraction of a second, as if registering my words. Then it lunged again, faster and more aggressively. I swung the dagger at its head, aiming for the glowing red eyes. The blade struck true, and the creature let out a deafening screech, recoiling as black smoke seeped from the wound. "That's it," I muttered, my confidence bolstered. Its eyes were the key. The creature flailed, its movements growing more erratic. I dodged another swipe, this time slashing at its other eye. The blade connected, and the creature let out a final, ear-splitting wail before collapsing into a heap of black shards. The air in the warehouse stilled, the oppressive energy lifting. I turned to Jessica, who was crouched within her circle of salt, her face pale and tear-streaked. "It's over," I said, wiping sweat from my brow. "For now." Back in Jessica's apartment, the black box sat on the table between us. Its runes pulsed faintly, a sinister reminder of its power. Jessica stared at it, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "Is it really over?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Not yet," I said, shaking my head. "This box is the source of your bond to the mirror. Until it's destroyed, the curse isn't truly broken." Jessica swallowed hard. "How do we destroy it?" "That's the hard part," I admitted. "The runes aren't just there to protect it, they're designed to retaliate. Destroying the box could have consequences." Her face paled further. "What kind of consequences?" I hesitated, then gave her the truth. "The worst-case scenario? Your soul could be completely consumed." Jessica's breath hitched, and for a moment, the room was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Finally, she spoke, her voice steadier than I expected. "Then what do we do?" I picked up my phone and dialed Gabriel. If anyone could guide us through this, it was him. Gabriel's home was far from the city, nestled deep within a forest. As we arrived, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the gravel driveway. Gabriel stood at the door, his tall frame silhouetted against the warm glow of his porch light. "You're late," he said, his tone calm but pointed. "Come inside. We have work to do." The interior of his home was a stark contrast to the grim events of the past few days. The walls were lined with bookshelves, their contents a mix of ancient tomes and modern texts. In the center of the living room, Gabriel had prepared the ritual space. A stone altar etched with intricate symbols, surrounded by candles and a circle of salt. "Place the box on the altar," Gabriel instructed. I did as he asked, and the air in the room seemed to shift immediately. The box pulsed faintly, as though aware of what was about to happen. Gabriel turned to Jessica, his expression serious. This ritual will sever your connection to the box, but it won't be easy. The energy tied to it will fight back, and you'll feel it. Are you ready? Jessica hesitated, then nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. Gabriel began the ritual, chanting in a language I didn't recognize. The symbols on the altar glowed faintly, their light growing stronger with each word he spoke. The box trembled, its runes flickering erratically. Jessica clutched her chest, a pained gasp escaping her lips. It's pulling at me, she whispered. Stay in the circle, Gabriel ordered, his voice sharp. Ethan, keep her steady. I grabbed Jessica's arm, holding her upright as she trembled. The box emitted a high-pitched whine, and cracks began to form along its surface. A red light seeped from the fractures, bathing the room in an eerie glow. Suddenly, the light coalesced into a shadowy figure above the box. It was the sorcerer, his face twisted in fury. You dare defy me? He roared, his voice echoing unnaturally. Gabriel didn't flinch, his chants growing louder. The sorcerer lunged toward Jessica, but the salt barrier flared, forcing him back with a hiss. His form twisted and writhed, his screams filling the air. Ethan, the dagger! Gabriel shouted, tossing me a blade inscribed with runes. I caught it and lunged at the shadow, driving the blade into its core. The sorcerer let out a final, agonized scream before dissolving into black smoke. The light from the box dimmed, and with a final crack, it shattered into pieces. Jessica collapsed, her breathing ragged but steady. I knelt beside her, relieved to see the color returning to her face. It's over, Gabriel said, his voice weary but certain. Jessica opened her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. Both of you. Gabriel glanced at the shattered remains of the box. Let's hope this time the lesson sticks. Back at Gabriel's home, the tension in the air was almost palpable. Though the ritual had ended, the lingering sense of unease clung to me like a shadow. I sat in Gabriel's study, staring at the fractured remains of the black box now sealed in a heavy cloth pouch on the table before us. This isn't just a simple cursed artifact, Gabriel said, breaking the silence. He gestured toward the pouch, the energy radiating from it. It's more than residual power. It feels like the core of something larger, something ritualistic. Ritualistic, I echoed, frowning. You think the sorcerer was using it for a sacrifice? Gabriel nodded slowly. Exactly. Jessica's case was likely one piece of a much bigger puzzle. If the sorcerer were alive, his plans wouldn't end here. Do you think he's still out there? I asked. Gabriel leaned back in his chair, his face shadowed in the dim light of the room. I'm not sure, but this, he tapped the pouch lightly. This tells me that Jessica wasn't an isolated case. It's possible there are others like her. If so, this was only the beginning. The weight of his words settled heavily on my chest. So what now? Do we try to find the others? Gabriel's piercing gaze locked onto mine. First, we track the origins of this box. If there are others, they'll lead us to them. But Ethan, he paused, his tone shifting. This might be the most dangerous adversary we've ever faced. If we go down this road, there's no turning back. A few days later, I called Jessica to check on her. Her voice was steadier than before, but what she told me sent a chill down my spine. Ethan, I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I feel like something's still here, she admitted. It's not like before. There's no presence, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. I reassured her as best as I could, though my stomach churned. If Gabriel's theory was right, the sorcerer's reach might not have ended with the destruction of the box. Stay vigilant, I told her. And if anything happens, anything at all, call me immediately. About a week later, Gabriel and I followed a lead to a neighboring city. We traced the box to a possible connection, a name tied to several unexplained deaths over the past decade. We booked a room in a small motel, planning to start the search the following day. That night, I found a note waiting for me in the room. It was written on plain, crumpled paper, the words scrawled in jagged, almost frantic handwriting. The sacrifice is never over. Darkness will return. I stared at the note, my heart pounding in my chest. Someone knew we were here. Someone was watching. I brought the note to Gabriel, who read it with a stony expression. "It's a message," he said flatly. "Someone, or something, wants us to know we're on the right track, or they're warning us to back off," I countered. Gabriel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned his attention to the window, gazing out at the darkened sky. The shadows of tree branches danced across the glass, casting eerie shapes on the walls of the room. "Do you think we can win this?" I asked finally, breaking the silence. Gabriel's expression didn't change. "This isn't about winning," he said after a long pause. "It's about delaying the inevitable. Every time we stop something like this, we're just buying time, keeping the darkness at bay for a little while longer." His words hung in the air, heavy with truth. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of our work pressing down on me in a way I couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a battle against ghosts or curses. It was a battle against something far deeper: human greed, obsession, and the primal forces that fed on them. Rain drummed against the windows of Gabriel's study, its rhythmic patter blending with the faint hum of the iron container on the shelf. Inside were the shattered fragments of the cursed box, now sealed away, though their residual energy still seemed to pulse faintly, like an unresolved echo of the sorcerer's work. Gabriel's words lingered in my mind. "You don't defeat the darkness. You just hold it off for as long as you can." Jessica's ordeal was over, or so it seemed. The box was destroyed, the mirror gone, and the guardian defeated. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only delayed the inevitable. The sorcerer's influence had been severed, but had we truly stopped him? Or was he still out there, watching, waiting for his next move? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the rain-streaked window. The city beyond blurred into a haze of light and shadow, an apt metaphor for the work we did. For 11 years, I'd been fighting the supernatural, but the hardest battles were always against the darkness within people themselves. Gabriel once told me, "The most dangerous thing isn't the ghosts we fight. It's the people who invite them in." Jessica's story was proof of that. Her ambition had driven her to seek out forbidden power, and though she survived, the scars of her choices would remain. I thought about the others. Gabriel was certain there were more like Jessica. People who had made deals with the sorcerer, their lives now tethered to the same dark magic. If he was right, this was only the beginning. Jessica was just one piece of a much larger puzzle, and the fragments we'd collected might be the key to unraveling it. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. A message from Gabriel. "Another case. We'll discuss it tomorrow." I sighed, the weight of responsibility settling back onto my shoulders. The darkness never rested, and neither could we. Rising from my chair, I walked to the window. The rain streaked down the glass, relentless and unyielding, mirroring the battle we fought every day. Somewhere out there, someone was making a choice they couldn't take back. And somewhere else, a shadow was waiting to claim its next victim. Gabriel was right. We weren't saviors. We were shields, standing between the world and the tide of darkness that threatened to consume it. We couldn't stop it, but as long as there were people like Jessica, and those who sought to manipulate forces beyond their understanding, we would always have work to do. I turned from the window, my mind already shifting to the next mission. The rain continued to fall, and the echoes of what we'd faced remained. But in the stillness of the night, I knew one thing for certain. The fight wasn't over. It never would be. Thank you for watching episode 9 of The Apprentice and the Hunter, Dark Forces Unleashed. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling adventures. If a cursed mirror could grant you your deepest desire, but at a terrible cost, would you dare to look into it? Let us know your thoughts or your scariest supernatural experience in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. Until next time, stay safe and beware of the shadows.